Here's the recipe I've been using for sourdough bread, and it rarely fails me. Start with 100 grams active sourdough starter and add in 375 grams of water. Then add 500 grams of bread flour, or if you don't have bread flour, you can make your own using 20 grams of vital wheat gluten to approximately 500 grams of flour. Finish off with 2 teaspoons of salt, and that's all the ingredients you need to make this sourdough bread. It's best if you start this recipe in the morning so you can do your stretch and folds every 30 minutes for the first couple of hours. Let it rise for 8 to 12 hours and then put it in the fridge overnight. After you've initially mixed your ingredients, set your timer for 30 minutes, come back and stretch your dough and fold it over itself, then cover and set a timer for another 30 minutes. You'll notice with each successive stretch and fold, your dough will become more elastic and more manageable to work with. This is what you're looking for. It's helping the flour process the gluten. And at this point is when I often add rosemary, because one of my favorite iterations of this is rosemary sourdough. Once you've completed 3 or 4 stretch and fold sessions, put it back in your bowl or a straight barreled container and let it rise for 8 to 12 hours until it's just about doubled in size, as you see here. If you leave it too long, it will overproof, and you'll know because it's sticky and way too bubbly. If it's perfectly proofed, it will have a good texture and bounce. I'm not an expert at sourdough. I'm still learning. And in fact, this part you're watching right now is the hardest part for me. This is shaping the dough, where people just pull the ends up and try to tuck them under to create a bread loaf, then put it in their Benetton basket upside down. We're going to cover it, put it in the fridge overnight. This is called a cold proof, and I'm not sure the science behind it, but again, this recipe hasn't failed me yet, even though I'm a total amateur, so I just keep doing what I'm doing. The next day, pull your bread out of your Benetton basket, reshape into a loaf if necessary, which kind of just means roll and tuck. You'll want to cut at least one deep groove down the side, which they call an ear, and then you can do little decorative cuts as desired. While you're doing this, preheat your oven to 450 or 500 degrees with your Dutch oven inside and the lid on. In your Dutch oven with parchment paper, or I'm using a silicone sling, put your loaf inside, lower your temperature to 450 degrees, and bake with the lid on for about 30 minutes. Then remove your lid, lower the temperature again to 400 degrees, and bake for a final 10 to 15 minutes. A couple tips and tricks I've gotten from the sourdough community is if you have issues with the bottom of your bread burning, put a cookie sheet underneath to shield the bottom of the Dutch oven from heat. Put a couple ice cubes inside your Dutch oven to create steam, which makes your crust nice and crispy. And some of my friends actually bake it for 20 minutes lid on, 18 minutes lid off. So play around with times until you get the perfect time and temperature settings for your preference. As much as you want to cut into your bread right away, let it sit for 1 whole hour after baking to prevent it from being gummy inside.